Benn just dominated Chris Eubank Jr. in their rematch. Their first fight was fireworks, and I thought we were going to see a repeat of that last night. Now, a big thing with this fight was the weight cut. Eubank looked drained and sluggish in their first fight, but he still found a way to pull off the win. When I found out that this rematch was going to be at 160 again, with also a rehydration clause, I knew this was going to cause some trouble for Eubank. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Benn or this fight, because Benn won like every round and scored those 2 knockdowns in round 12. He put on a great performance. Additionally, I did pick Eubank to win this fight as well. But you can't tell me that with this weight cut and rehydration clause that it did not affect him. Had there been no rehydration clause, which was no fighters could weigh more than 170 after a weigh-in, this definitely would have been a whole different fight. And you can't say, well, both fighters had the rehydration clause and both fighters had to make 160. Technically, yeah, they did, but let's compare both fighters. Chris Eubank, 36 years old, and he's 3 inches taller than Benn. On top of that, he's been fighting at super middleweight and middleweight majority of his career. You look at Benn, 7 years younger, 5'8", fought at welterweight and middleweight majority of his career. This is a much harder weight cut on Chris Eubank, especially having to do it twice in the same year. Much more taxing on the body, and you saw in that fight, he was just looking sluggish. He was looking like he didn't really want to be there. Maybe he did, but he just couldn't really do it. He couldn't really show it physically. He was looking to survive. When fighters are looking to survive, it's not good on them. And you could just tell from the first 4 or 5 rounds, he was just looking to survive. Before we continue, I'm going to give a shout out to my sponsor at Hayabusa. Some of the best boxing equipment out there. You can get gloves, shoes, headgear, groin protectors, clothes, whatever you got to get. Use the code ALEXD, ALEXD, get a percentage off your order. Link is down below in the description. So the fight's 1-1. And I'm sure a lot of people on Riyadh, Matchroom, they like that trilogy. I mean, 2 stadium shows, did a lot of good numbers. Of course, a lot of background to that with their fathers. I mean, a trilogy could be in the picture. Of course, now that it's 1-1. But if they're going to have this trilogy at 160 again, I mean, that's suicide for Eubank. I said this for this current fight, this rematch, that it was suicide for Eubank. Don't even waste your time if you're going to do it at 160. If I was Eubank, I wouldn't even agree. I don't know if they have some contract or what, but a trilogy, it has to be at least at 168, which would be tougher for Benn to make. I understand that. But at that point then, just leave it at 1-1. A good fight for the fans, a good fight for both of them. No titles were even on the line. I think leaving it at 1-1 is good. For boxing, I think just for the history of that Eubank versus Benn family fights and rivalries, I think that's good. To have a trilogy at 168, it's going to be a little unfair for Benn, better for Eubank, but at 160, definitely going to be even more unfair for Eubank and an advantage for Benn. I think it's best for both fighters to move on now. Benn, I think it's time for him to actually chase titles. He is not going to be winning titles with this Eubank fight, chasing a trilogy. I think it's time for Benn to really chase titles at whether it's welterweight, super welterweight, or middleweight. Wherever it is, it's time for him to really chase titles. I think Benn looks pretty comfortable at middleweight. Middleweight is a division that, of course, is pretty weak. We're getting some action now with Erislandy Lara and Janibek, but I think Benn could definitely chase at that division. You know, Lara's old. I'm sure he'll retire. He might even retire after this fight, depending if he wins or loses. Janibek, I'm sure he'll bump up to 168 eventually. 160 is a pretty weaker division. I think he could definitely go for a championship belt. Maybe not become champion, but definitely fight for a belt and compete, be a solid contender at the division for the next 2 or 3 years. Or if he wants to go to 154. I mean, I'm sure Fundura might bump up eventually. Virgil Ortiz, I'm sure he's not going to stay there forever. He'll try to get a belt and bump up. I mean, maybe Benn could try to compete at 154. I'm sure Ortiz is going to stay there for a while. Same with Boots, but Fundura is the guy that I see could bump up. You know, you see Zayas and the guy he's fighting for the unified titles. Those 2 guys holding 2 belts. They're not the best. Benn could definitely beat those type of guys. So Benn should just kind of forget this trilogy and really chase titles. And the same with Chris Eubank. You know, this is really tricky now. I thought if Chris Eubank was to win this fight, I think he'd have one more fight with a retirement fight for a world title. Of course, Terrence Crawford has the belts, but with Terrence Crawford having Bomac as a trainer, staying with Chris Eubank, of course they wouldn't fight, but maybe Crawford would drop a belt because it really doesn't matter. Crawford's undisputed now. There's really no reason for him to hold on to all the belts, especially if he doesn't plan to stay active every year. You know, maybe he could drop a belt, allow Eubank to fight for that, go out for 168, one last retirement fight. I thought that would be the perfect way for Eubank to go out, right? Fight for a title one last time. But now with a loss, I don't even know. I mean, there's rumors that he might have retired before this fight. Now with a loss, I think those rumors could become even more true. I mean, it's not that he's bad. He's a good fighter. He still has something in him. But making 160 was just dangerous for him. I think he needs to stay at 168, maybe even 175. He has the frame for it. 175 he'll probably lose, but at 168, I think he could win a belt if Crawford was to scatter them. I think he could beat Caleb Plant, beat Berlanga, beat one of the Charlos, beat Munguia, beat Resendiz. I think he has the abilities to do that. Of course, he can't beat Crawford, and I doubt they'll fight, but I don't know if he'll beat Canelo, but that's definitely a chance now, right? I mean, Canelo, we're seeing him on the decline. Not that he has a belt or anything. I don't even know what's next for Canelo when it comes to world titles. Shiraz, okay, that could be a good fight for Britain. That's another Wembley seller. So, there's definitely options for both fighters outside of the trilogy. I want to see them keep going. I want to see at least one more fight from Eubank, and I want to see Ben actually go for a title chase now. I think it's time for him. 29 years old. He's only in his prime for so long. Go after it. But hey, let me know down below in the comments, guys, what you thought of this fight. How much of an impact was that weight cut? Had there been a rehydration clause, do you think Eubank would have won? If it was at 168, do you think Eubank would have won? What's next for both fighters? Let me know down below in the comments, and I really appreciate if you guys subscribe. Help me get to 25,000 subscribers. I appreciate all you guys for watching all my videos. I'm out, guys. Peace.